Welcome to our second video for Unit 2, which is all about the nervous system. We are going to look at the different divisions of the nervous system. You'll see on your note sheet it's kind of a web, so you're going to fill in as we go the different parts of the nervous system. So let's start out very basic by looking at what the nervous system is. So the nervous system is all of the nerve cells that are in our body. It's our body's speedy electrochemical communication system. Things happen really fast with the nervous system. The nervous system is broken down into two main divisions. The first is the central nervous system. The central nervous system contains the spine and the brain. Think of this because it's in the center of your body. So it's the central nervous system. The second half is the peripheral nervous system. This is on our periphery of our body, the outside. And the peripheral nervous system's job is to connect the central nervous system to the rest of the body by means of sensory and motor neurons. We are going to break the peripheral nervous system down a little bit further, but let's first talk about the central nervous system. Like I said, the central nervous system is two main parts. The brain, which is the neural center or the control center, the command center of our body, makes the decisions, and then those decisions get put out to the rest of the body. And the spine is the highway of sorts. Okay? It is how those messages that the brain, the decision that the brain made, how it is now being transmitted to the rest of the body. So the spine, think of as like Highway 43 or 94. It's the way that we get to and from the main city, Milwaukee, to the other parts of the Metro Milwaukee area. So let's break down the peripheral nervous system then. Remember, the peripheral nervous system is going to be the way that the rest of our body communicates with the central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is broken down into two main parts. The autonomic nervous system. It sounds like automatic, but it's not. Don't put that in on FRQ. Okay? It sounds like automatic, and you should think that way, but it's autonomic, and this controls involuntary functions. Okay? Things that happen within our body we don't have to think about. Breathing, our heartbeat, our digestion, our bodily functions like peeing and pooping, right? Those things our body does without us having to think about it. That's our autonomic nervous system. Our somatic nervous system, on the other hand, is those voluntary movements. Think soma. Remember, soma is the neural cell body. And so our body movements then. These are going to be those voluntary things that you have to think about. They don't just happen. So me picking up my cell phone is going to be a voluntary movement. That would be my somatic nervous system allowing me to do that. Okay. Let's go back to the autonomic nervous system because it is broken down again into two divisions. And those two divisions are the sympathetic nervous system. So our sympathetic nervous system arouses the body. It gets our body ready for fight or flight. It prepares us to act or react in a stressful situation, expending energy, getting us ready to do something. Okay? Think about when you are in a very stressful situation. Maybe you have to give a speech in front of the class. What are the things that happen to your body? You start to sweat, your heartbeat starts to race, your knees might shake. In really stressful situations, maybe you'll pee your pants, right? You might get a stomach ache. All of those things are your body being aroused by the sympathetic nervous system. Okay? So they're preparing you to either fight, get out of that situation, or run away, far away from that situation. The other half is the parasympathetic nervous system. This system calms the body. So once you are done giving your speech in front of the class, now your body starts to calm. It conserves energy. It does the opposite of the sympathetic nervous system. So it returns our body to a natural state. So think about that. When you would sit down after you give your speech, you're going to stop. Your heart rate's going to slow back down. Your breathing's going to slow. You're going to stop sweating. Your knees are going to stop shaking. Your stomach ache is gone. All of those things are returning your body back to normal. That's the parasympathetic nervous system. Okay, so let's look at what is actually happening in the body. We talked about a few examples, but let's talk about them again. So the sympathetic nervous system, remember, is preparing us. It's arousing us for that fight or flight, and it is gearing our body up to do something. And so the things that are happening, our digestion is inhibited. So we stop digesting food. We want that energy that our body would take to digest food to go somewhere else, to enable us to run away if we need to. It also stimulates glucose release by the liver. Glucose is our body's natural energy, and so it produces more energy that our body can burn. Okay, so we get more energy to be able to run or to fight back. And it stimulates the release of epinephrine and norepinephrine by our adrenal gland, both of which are going to have to do with physical activity, right? It is going to allow us to arouse the body to act. It also deals with memory and learning, and so there is a lot of research to show that you actually learn better in a stressful situation. We also, our pupils dilate, so they get really big because we want to be able to see more of what is going on. And we also have increased breathing. So our breathing goes up. We start to breathe really fast. Our heart rate gets really fast because we are trying to oxygenate our blood so that we can quickly act in any situation. Our parasympathetic nervous system, remember, is going to do the opposite. It's going to calm the body. So a lot of things that happen when your sympathetic nervous system is aroused are going to be the opposite for your parasympathetic nervous system. So now we are stimulating digestion. That's why we tend to digest a lot of food when we are sleeping, because we're at a resting state. Our pupils contract again. They get smaller because we don't need to bring in as much light or information from our eyes. Our breathing and our heart rate are going to slow down. And so all of those things that were happening when we were gearing up to fight are now calming down. Okay, so let's talk about the different types of neurons there are. There's 3 different types. The first is a sensory neuron. You also need to know this as an afferent neuron. You need to know both ways. Sensory neurons carry incoming messages from sense receptors. So think about your senses, your hearing, your sight, your smell, your taste. All of those are sensory neurons that are then sending the information to our spine, okay, which then carries it up to the brain. Afferent, you can remember, is information arriving at the brain, okay? Sensory neurons arrive, they send messages to the brain. The messages arrive at the brain, okay? So those sensory neurons are sent from our hands, our taste, our smell, etc., etc. Those, again, go up to the brain. Our interneurons are going to be the only neurons that are within our central nervous system, okay? And our central nervous system, remember, is our spine and our brain. So these interneurons are the messenger horses. They carry the messages between the sensory neurons, which we just talked about, and the motor neurons, which we're going to talk about in a minute, okay? So when sensory neurons receive a message, so we touch something hot, that information gets sent to our spine, where the interneurons in our spine are going to carry it up to our brain, okay? The motor neurons, or the efferent neurons, carry outgoing information from the central nervous system, so from our brain, to the peripheral nervous system and muscles. Our motor neurons are going to tell us to move. right? So motor skills mean our movement. And so motor neurons tell us to move. So if I put my hand onto a hot stove, my sensory neurons feel that heat. They send the information to my spine, where my interneurons pick up the information. It then gets sent to my brain, which decodes that message as, ouch, hot, move your hand, you dummy. Our brain then sends in another message to the spine via interneurons. Those interneurons then connect with the motor neurons, which send information back to my hand to tell it to move. Okay? So sensory information goes in, motor neurons or motor information comes out. Okay? Let's talk a little bit though about reflexes and how those work, because sometimes when you put your hand on the stove, your body's going to react before you even feel the pain. Okay? That's a reflex. That is an evolutionary advantage for us to have that. So what happens is if you do something that is hurting your body, you put your hand on a hot stove, you grab a hot curling iron, whatever it might be, the sensory neuron carries that to your interneuron in the spine, which immediately says, oh my gosh, this is a bad situation, we gotta move it quick. So it bypasses the brain and it just makes the decision to move the hand. That's why you are moving your hand before you even know that you're in pain, because your brain hasn't been able to really decode the message of the pain quite yet. The next video we're going to do is going to be talking about the endocrine system, which is very closely related to the nervous system, in our next set of notes.